It's 3:47 a.m. somewhere in the world, and you're here again, scrolling through the digital void searching for something your rational mind can't name. Tonight we're diving into dangerous territory, the psychology of minds that simply refuse to fit into the neat little boxes society has prepared for them. You know those boxes labeled normal, productive, and well-adjusted, the same ones that feel like psychological coffins to anyone with an IQ above room temperature. Here's the uncomfortable truth: your guidance counselor never mentioned intelligence isn't just about solving equations or memorizing facts. It's about seeing patterns others miss, questioning systems others accept, and carrying the exhausting burden of a mind that never truly shuts off. Your brain is basically running a 24/7 philosophy cafe, while everyone else is content with drive-through conversations. The good news: you're not broken. The bad news: you're awake in a world that rewards sleepwalking. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, especially those of you existing in the liminal hours when thoughts get dangerous and insights cut deep. Dim the lights, adjust your headphones, and prepare to recognize yourself in ways that might be both validating and slightly disturbing. You're no longer in your bedroom. You're inside the collective unconscious of everyone who's ever felt like an alien studying human behavior. The password for tonight's session is simple intellectual honesty. And fair warning, your ego might want to take notes, but your shadow is the one who'll actually be listening. This isn't another self-help sermon promising you'll wake up transformed. This is recognition. This is the quiet acknowledgement that some minds are built differently, and that difference isn't a defect. It's a design feature that most people will never understand. Carl Jung once observed that the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. But what happens when who you are doesn't fit the templates society has created? What happens when your natural way of existing feels like a constant act of rebellion against the mundane expectations of a world that mistakes conformity for maturity? Tonight, we're exploring 12 psychological patterns that reveal the hidden architecture of highly intelligent minds. These aren't party tricks or conversation starters. These are the subtle behavioral signatures of people whose internal worlds are so complex that their external expressions often confuse, intimidate, or exhaust others. You've probably noticed that you don't think like most people. You've likely felt the strange isolation that comes with seeing connections. Others miss asking questions others avoid, and needing silence when the world demands noise. This isn't about intellectual superiority. It's about cognitive difference. It's about understanding why your mind operates more like a research laboratory than a simple processing unit. The first truth we need to confront is that real intelligence, is often indistinguishable from mental illness to people who lack the framework to understand it. Your depth looks like depression to shallow minds. Your complexity appears as instability to those who've never experienced the weight of seeing too much, understanding too clearly, or feeling too deeply. You exist in a world where emotional numbness is considered stability, where intellectual curiosity is seen as overthinking, and where the ability to question systems is interpreted as troublemaking. Your mind's natural functions, analysis pattern, recognition, deep reflection, and authentic questioning, are not celebrated in most social and professional environments. Instead, they're pathologized, medicated, or systematically suppressed. This isn't paranoia, this is observable reality for anyone paying attention to how intelligence is actually treated in practice versus how it's praised in theory. Society claims to value intelligence while simultaneously creating systems that punish its authentic expression. Schools reward memorization over critical thinking. Workplaces promote compliance over innovation. Social groups ostracize people who ask uncomfortable questions or notice inconvenient truths. The result is a culture of intellectual hiding, where genuinely intelligent people learn to camouflage their cognitive abilities to avoid social and professional consequences. You've probably mastered this camouflage without even realizing it. Dumbing down your vocabulary, pretending not to notice obvious patterns, asking questions you already know the answers to, or expressing uncertainty about things you're quite certain about. Let's begin with the first habit that intelligent people know intimately but rarely discuss openly. Your mind doesn't just process information, it dissects it, reconstructs it, and runs multiple simulations before reaching a conclusion. What others call overthinking you experience as thoroughness. What they call simple decisions you recognize as complex systems with multiple variables and potential consequences. When someone asks if you want coffee or tea, your brain immediately begins calculating the caffeine content, the time of day, your current stress levels, how each option might affect your sleep cycle, the social implications of your choice, and whether. This seemingly innocent question is actually a test of some kind. By the time you've finished this analysis, the person asking has probably assumed you're either indecisive or strange. This isn't pathological indecision, it's pattern recognition working over time. Your brain has learned that most choices carry more weight than they appear to, and simple questions often contain hidden complexities that less observant minds miss entirely. You've been trained by experience to look for the catch, the subtext, the unspoken implications that others either can't see or choose to ignore. The exhaustion you feel isn't from thinking too much. It's from living in a world that punishes. Careful consideration and reward snap judgments. You've learned that taking time to think is often interpreted as weakness, uncertainty, or pretension, when in reality it's the mark of a mind that refuses to operate on autopilot. Jung understood this when he wrote about the introversion of thinking types. He recognized that some people need to process information internally before responding externally, and that this internal processing time isn't hesitation, it's integration. Your overthinking isn't a bug in your programming. It's a feature that allows you to navigate complexity with a precision that others mistake for paralysis. The tragedy is that you've probably learned to apologize for this thoroughness, to speed up your natural processing time, to accommodate others' impatience to make decisions before you're ready, simply to avoid the discomfort of being seen as indecisive. But your mind's refusal to rush through important choices isn't a character flaw. It's an intelligence marker that most people lack the patience to recognize. Consider how this overthinking manifests in your daily life. You read emails multiple times before sending them, not because you're insecure, but because you're aware of how many ways language can be misinterpreted. You rehearse conversations in your head, not because you're anxious, but because you understand that communication is complex and preparation improves outcomes. You research purchases thoroughly, not because you're indecisive, but because you recognize that most buying decisions have implications beyond the immediate transaction. Your overthinking extends to interpersonal relationships, where you analyze behavior patterns, decode subtext, and try to understand the underlying motivations that drive people's actions. Others might call this analysis paranoid or obsessive, but you've learned that understanding human behavior requires careful observation and thoughtful interpretation. The challenge is that your natural thoroughness operates at a different pace than the world expects. Modern life demands quick responses, instant decisions, and immediate reactions. Your mind's preference for careful analysis conflicts with a culture that values speed over accuracy, decisiveness over thoughtfulness, and confidence over humility. This creates a constant internal tension between your natural cognitive processes and external expectations. You're forced to choose between honoring your mind's need for thorough analysis and meeting social demands for quick responses. Most of the time you compromise giving partial answers when you need more time to think, making preliminary decisions when you'd prefer to gather more information, or expressing confidence about conclusions you're still developing. The cost of this compromise is significant. When you're forced to operate faster than your natural processing speed, you don't perform at your optimal level. Your insights are less deep, your decisions are less informed, and your contributions are less valuable than they would be if you had the time and space your mind requires. Learning to honor your overthinking tendency isn't about becoming slower or more indecisive. It's about recognizing that your mind's preference for thorough analysis is a strength that requires different kinds of time management and communication by strategies than those used by more impulsive thinkers. You talk to yourself, and not just in moments of stress or confusion. Your mind maintains a constant internal dialogue, questioning, analyzing, explaining, debating, and exploring ideas that would never make it into polite conversation. This isn't a sign of instability. It's how highly intelligent minds process the constant stream of observations and insights that others either don't notice or don't find worthy of examination. Your internal conversations serve multiple functions. They help you rehearse important discussions, work through complex problems, play devil's advocate with your own ideas, and maintain a sense of intellectual companionship in a world that often feels intellectually lonely. When you're physically alone, you're never truly alone. Your mind provides the stimulating company that external social situations often fail to deliver. This habit often develops in childhood, when intelligent children realize that their observations, questions, and insights aren't always welcome in family or school settings. They learn to have the conversations they need internally, creating a rich psychological space where their minds can roam freely without judgment or interruption. The irony is that people who engage in regular self-dialogue often have clearer thinking and better decision-making skills than those who rely primarily on external input. By maintaining this internal conversation, you're essentially running quality control on your thoughts, testing ideas for consistency, logic, and emotional resonance before expressing them to others. But society tends to pathologize this behavior, associating talking to oneself with mental illness, rather than recognizing it as a sophisticated form of cognitive processing. You've probably learned to hide this habit to conduct your internal dialogues silently, or to disguise them as phone conversations to avoid the strange looks and concerned questions of others. The truth is that your mind craves intellectual stimulation, and when the external world fails to provide it consistently, you create it internally. This isn't compensation for social inadequacy, it's intellectual self-sufficiency. You've learned to be your own best conversation partner, because you've discovered that most people can't or won't engage with the complexity of your actual thoughts. Your internal dialogue operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On one level, you're processing immediate experiences and observations. On another, you're connecting current events to broader patterns and historical contexts. On a third level, you're evaluating your own responses and reactions, analyzing your motivations, and examining your assumptions. This multi-layered internal processing allows you to understand situations more completely than people who rely primarily on immediate surface-level reactions. Your internal dialogue helps you integrate emotional responses with logical analysis, personal experience with abstract knowledge, and individual perspective with universal patterns. The quality of your internal dialogue often exceeds the quality of most external conversations you have access to. Your mind naturally gravitates toward complexity, nuance, and depth, while most social conversation remains at levels of superficiality that feel intellectually unsatisfying to you. This creates a strange paradox where you can feel lonely in the middle of social gatherings, not because you dislike people, but because the level of engagement your mind craves is rarely available. In group settings, your internal dialogue provides the intellectual stimulation that external conversations often lack. The challenge is finding external conversations that match the quality of your internal dialogue. This requires seeking out people who enjoy deep discussion, complex analysis, and philosophical exploration. It means being selective about your social investments and prioritizing quality over quantity in your relationships. Your internal dialogue isn't something to suppress or eliminate. It's something to value and refine. Learning to distinguish between productive self-dialogue and unproductive rumination helps you harness this natural tendency as a tool for insight and understanding, rather than a source of anxiety or confusion. Surface-level conversations feel like intellectual quicksand to you. When someone asks, "How's the weather?" you don't just hear a simple question. You hear an invitation to participate in a meaningless social ritual that accomplishes nothing except filling silence with noise. Your mind, accustomed to depth and significance, rebels against these empty exchanges. This isn't social anxiety or arrogance, it's cognitive mismatch. Your brain is wired to seek meaning, connection, and substantive exchange. Small talk represents the opposite of everything your mind values. It's superficial, predictable and devoid of the kind of intellectual nourishment that makes conversation worthwhile for you. You've probably noticed that you can engage in small talk when necessary, but it drains you in ways that deeper conversations energize you. This is because superficial social interaction requires you to suppress your natural way of thinking and communicating, forcing you to operate at a cognitive level far below your capacity. The real tragedy of small talk aversion isn't that you struggle with it. It's that society interprets your discomfort with meaningless chatter as social inadequacy rather than recognizing it as a preference for quality over quantity in human interaction. You're not antisocial, you're selectively social. You're not unfriendly, you're conserving your energy for exchanges that matter. Jung wrote extensively about the difference between extroverted and introverted communication styles, noting that introverted thinkers often prefer fewer, deeper connections over many shallow ones. Your small talk aversion isn't a character defect. It's a reflection of your mind's natural preference for substance over style, meaning over momentum. When you do engage in deeper conversations, you probably notice that you come alive in ways that surprise both you and others. Your energy increases, your wit sharpens, and you reveal aspects of your personality that remain hidden during superficial interactions. This is your mind operating in its natural habitat, the realm of ideas, insights, and genuine human connection. The challenge isn't learning to love small talk. It's finding people and situations where deeper conversation is not only possible, but welcomed. Your discomfort with surface-level interaction isn't something to overcome, it's something to honor, by seeking out the kinds of exchanges that feed your soul rather than drain it. Small talk serves important social functions that your mind understands intellectually, but struggles with emotionally. It establishes social connection without requiring vulnerability. It provides a safe way to interact with strangers or acquaintances without risking deeper engagement. It offers a socially acceptable way to fill silence and demonstrate friendliness. But for minds like yours, these functions feel inadequate compared to the richness and satisfaction that comes from meaningful dialogue. You'd rather have one profound conversation than 10 pleasant exchanges. You'd prefer authentic silence to artificial chatter. You value genuine connection over social convenience. This preference creates practical challenges in professional and social environments where small talk is expected and often required. Networking events, office parties, social gatherings, and professional meetings often begin with extended periods of superficial conversation that feel torturous to you. You've probably developed strategies for managing these situations, asking questions that might lead to deeper discussion, finding conversation partners who seem open to more substantive exchange, or simply enduring the small talk phase until more meaningful interaction becomes possible. The key is recognizing that your small talk aversion isn't a social deficit. It's a reflection of your mind's preference for depth and meaning. Learning to navigate superficial social requirements while preserving your energy for meaningful interaction is a skill that allows you to function in social environments without compromising your natural communication style. Your mind resists rigid structure the way water resists being forced uphill. While others find comfort in predictable routines, you experience them as psychological prisons that stifle your natural creativity and curiosity. This isn't laziness or lack of discipline. It's your intelligence rebelling against systems that prioritize compliance over innovation. Highly intelligent minds crave novelty, challenge, and the freedom to follow intellectual rabbit holes wherever they might lead. Rigid routines represent the antithesis of this natural tendency, forcing you to operate in patterns that feel arbitrary and constraining. Your resistance to routine isn't immaturity, it's your brain's way of protecting its need for stimulation and growth. This creates a particular kind of suffering in a world that worships routine as the key to success and happiness. You've probably been told countless times that you need more structure, better habits, and stricter schedules. You've likely tried to force yourself into productivity systems that work for others, but feel like torture devices for your particular type of mind. The truth is that your brain operates more like a jazz musician than a classical orchestra. You need the freedom to improvise, to change direction when inspiration strikes, to follow your energy rather than fighting against it. Routine-based productivity advice isn't just ineffective for you. It's actively harmful because it forces you to work against your natural cognitive rhythms. Jung recognized this in his observation that some personalities are naturally more adaptive and flexible than others. He understood that forcing structure-resistant minds into rigid frameworks creates psychological tension and reduces rather than increases effectiveness. Your routine rebellion isn't a character flaw. It's a sign that your mind needs different kinds of organization than the standard models provide. This doesn't mean you can't be productive or organized. It means you need to find systems that work with your cognitive preferences rather than against them. You might work in intense bursts followed by periods of rest. You might need to change your environment regularly to maintain focus. You might be most creative when you're following your curiosity rather than forcing yourself through predetermined tasks. Your resistance to routine often extends beyond just daily schedules, to include resistance to career paths, relationship patterns, and lifestyle choices that feel too predictable or constraining. You might find yourself changing jobs, moving locations, or ending relationships not because they're bad, but because they've become too routine and no longer provide the stimulation your mind requires. This pattern can be frustrating because it seems to prevent you from building the kind of stable, predictable life that society values. You might feel like you lack commitment or follow-through when in reality you're responding to your mind's legitimate need for variety and challenge. The key is recognizing that your resistance to routine isn't something to overcome. It's something to understand and work with. Your mind is telling you something important about how it functions best, and listening to that information is far more valuable than forcing yourself into patterns that feel unnatural. This might mean building flexibility into your schedule, creating variety within necessary routines, or finding ways to inject novelty and challenge into repetitive tasks. It might mean choosing career paths that offer variety and autonomy, or building relationships that can accommodate your need for change and growth. Understanding your routine rebellion allows you to design a life that works with your cognitive preferences rather than against them. This isn't about avoiding all structure. It's about finding the kind of structure that supports rather than suppresses your natural intelligence. You enter new situations like an anthropologist studying an unfamiliar culture. Before speaking, before engaging, before revealing anything about yourself, you watch. You notice the power dynamics, the unspoken rules, the subtle interactions that others miss or take for granted. This isn't social anxiety, it's intelligence gathering. Your mind automatically begins mapping the social terrain of any new environment. Who speaks first? Who do others look to for approval? What topics are safe and which are taboo? What are the real rules beneath the stated rules? This observation period isn't hesitation, it's strategic assessment by a mind that has learned that social situations contain layers of complexity that require careful analysis. Others might interpret your initial silence as shyness, aloofness, or disinterest, but you're actually engaged in intensive observation and analysis. You're reading the room at a level that most people can't access, gathering information that will inform your interactions and help you navigate the social landscape more effectively. This habit often develops from early experiences of social missteps, moments when your natural directness or intensity created unexpected reactions or conflicts. You learned that social situations require careful navigation and that taking time to understand the environment before engaging can prevent misunderstandings and awkward exchanges. The observer's instinct also reflects your mind's natural tendency to seek patterns and understand systems. Social groups are complex systems with their own internal logic, and your brain automatically begins decoding these systems as soon as you encounter them. This isn't manipulation or calculation. It's pattern recognition applied to human behavior. You've probably noticed that this initial observation period allows you to contribute more meaningfully when you do choose to engage. By understanding the context and dynamics, you can offer insights that are more relevant and impactful than if you had jumped into the conversation immediately. The challenge is that many social situations reward quick engagement over thoughtful observation. The people who speak first and loudest often dominate conversations, leaving little space for the kind of considered contributions that your mind naturally wants to make. This can create the false impression that you have nothing to offer when, in reality, you're offering something different: depth over volume, quality over quantity. Your observer's instinct extends beyond just social situations to include environments, systems, and patterns in all areas of life. You notice details that others miss, patterns that others don't see, and inconsistencies that others overlook. This observational skill is one of your greatest assets. But it can also be overwhelming when you're constantly noticing things that others either can't see or don't find significant. Learning to trust your observational instincts, while also finding ways to share your insights effectively, is an ongoing challenge. Your observations are valuable, but they need to be communicated in ways that others can understand and appreciate, rather than finding threatening or strange. The key is developing confidence in your observational abilities, while also learning to translate your insights into forms that others can access and benefit from. Your observer's instinct isn't social awkwardness. It's a sophisticated form of intelligence that allows you to understand situations more completely than people who rely on immediate reactions and surface-level impressions. Your nervous system operates at a higher frequency than most people's, making you acutely aware of environmental factors that others either don't notice or easily ignore. The fluorescent lighting that seems normal to everyone else feels harsh and artificial to you. The background noise that others tune out creates a constant low-level stress that interferes with your ability to think clearly. This isn't pickiness or high maintenance. It's a neurological reality of highly intelligent, sensitive minds. Your brain processes sensory information more thoroughly and completely than average, which means you're aware of environmental factors that simply don't register for less sensitive nervous systems. The constant bombardment of sensory input that characterizes modern life can be overwhelming for minds like yours. Open-plan offices, noisy restaurants, crowded spaces, and chaotic environments don't just distract you. They actively interfere with your ability to access your natural intelligence and creativity. You've probably learned to create or seek out environments that support your cognitive functioning: quiet spaces, natural lighting, minimal visual clutter, and controlled noise levels. Others might see this as being difficult or antisocial, but you've learned that your mind operates best under specific conditions, and you've become skilled at creating or finding those conditions. This environmental sensitivity extends beyond just physical comfort. It's about creating the conditions necessary for your mind to function at its optimal level. Just as a musician needs proper acoustics and lighting to perform well, your brain needs the right environmental conditions to access its full capacity. Jung wrote about the relationship between introversion and sensitivity to external stimuli, noting that introverted thinking types are often more affected by their environment than extroverted types. This isn't weakness. It's a different way of processing and responding to the world that requires different kinds of support and accommodation. The tragedy is that most environments are designed for the average nervous system, not for highly sensitive, intelligent minds. You're forced to function in spaces that actively work against your natural cognitive processes, then criticized for not performing at your best under these suboptimal conditions. Your environmental sensitivity includes awareness of subtle factors that others don't notice: the quality of air circulation, the psychological impact of different colors and textures, the way that certain sounds affect your ability to concentrate, and the emotional atmosphere that different spaces create. You might find that your productivity and creativity vary dramatically based on your physical environment. A cluttered space might feel chaotic and distracting, while an organized environment helps your mind function more clearly. Natural lighting might energize you, while artificial lighting creates fatigue. Certain types of music might enhance your thinking, while other sounds feel intrusive and disruptive. Learning to advocate for your environmental needs isn't being demanding. It's being smart about creating the conditions necessary for your mind to thrive. Your sensitivity to environmental factors isn't something to overcome. It's information about what your brain needs to function optimally. This might mean investing in noise-canceling headphones, creating a home office space that supports your productivity, choosing restaurants and social venues based on their acoustic properties, or simply becoming more aware of how different environments affect your mental state and performance. Understanding your environmental sensitivity allows you to make choices that support, rather than undermine, your cognitive functioning. This isn't about controlling everything in your environment. It's about recognizing the factors that significantly impact your mental performance and making adjustments where possible. Your relationship with solitude is fundamentally different from most people's. While others experience alone time as loneliness or boredom, you experience it as restoration, creativity, and intellectual freedom. Solitude isn't something you tolerate. It's something you crave and protect because you've learned that it's essential for your psychological well-being. During periods of solitude, your mind finally has the space and quiet it needs to process. The constant stream of observations, insights, and ideas that accumulate during social interaction. Without this processing time, you feel mentally congested, emotionally overwhelmed, and intellectually frustrated. Your need for solitude isn't antisocial behavior, it's intellectual hygiene. Just as your body needs sleep to restore and repair, itself your mind needs alone time to integrate experiences, explore ideas, and reconnect with your authentic thoughts and feelings. This processing time is when your best insights emerge, your creativity flows most freely, and your sense of self remains clear and centered. Society often pathologizes the need for solitude, interpreting it as depression, antisocial behavior, or emotional immaturity. You've probably been encouraged to be more social, to get out more, to avoid spending too much time alone. But for minds like yours, solitude isn't isolation, it's integration. The quality of your alone time is often superior to the quality of your social time, not because you dislike people, but because solitude allows you to engage with ideas, creativity, and authentic emotion, without the constant need to translate, explain, or modify your thoughts for others' consumption. You've probably noticed that after periods of meaningful solitude, you're more present and engaged in your social interactions. This is because alone time allows you to process and integrate your experiences, leaving you with more mental and emotional resources to offer others. Jung understood this when he wrote about the introvert's need for solitude as a source of energy rather than a drain on it. He recognized that for certain personality types, social interaction, no matter how pleasant, requires energy output, while solitude allows for energy restoration and renewal. Your need for solitude extends beyond just needing quiet time to think. It includes the need for unstructured time, when your mind can wander freely, explore random connections, and engage in the kind of associative thinking that produces genuine insights and creative breakthroughs. During solitude, you can fully be yourself without the constant monitoring and adjustment that social interaction requires. You can think controversial thoughts, explore unpopular ideas, and engage with aspects of yourself that might not be acceptable or understandable to others. This authentic engagement with your own mind and emotions during solitude helps you maintain psychological integrity in a world that often requires you to compromise your natural responses and reactions to maintain social harmony. Your solitude isn't empty time, it's full time. It's when you read challenging books, explore complex ideas, engage in creative projects, and allow your mind to make the kinds of connections and insights that require sustained, uninterrupted thinking. The challenge is protecting this solitude time in a culture that equates busyness with importance and social engagement with mental health. You might need to become more assertive about your need for alone time, setting boundaries around your schedule and energy to ensure that you have adequate space for the kind of mental processing that keeps you functioning optimally. You've learned to hide your intelligence the way others learn to hide their flaws, not out of shame but out of survival. Social, professional, and emotional survival in a world that often punishes people for being too smart, too observant, or too questioning. This camouflage takes many forms, dumbing down your vocabulary in certain social settings, pretending not to notice obvious patterns or inconsistencies, asking questions you already know the answers to, or expressing uncertainty about things you're quite certain about. You've developed a sophisticated social skill set designed to make others comfortable with your presence by concealing the true extent of your analytical capabilities. The tragedy isn't that you're capable of this deception, it's that you've learned it's necessary. You've discovered through experience that revealing your full intelligence can create discomfort, resentment, intimidation, or isolation in many social and professional situations. So you've learned to modulate your intellectual output based on your audience, showing just enough intelligence to be respected, but not so much that you're seen as threatening or strange. This isn't just about academic intelligence. It's about emotional intelligence, pattern recognition, and intuitive understanding that allows you to see through social facades, organizational dysfunction, and personal self-deception that others either can't see or prefer not to acknowledge. You've probably become skilled at reading social situations and determining how much of your actual thinking to reveal. With some people, you can be more open about your observations and insights. With others, you've learned to keep your deeper thoughts to yourself, to avoid creating tension or discomfort. This intelligence camouflage extends to professional settings where being too insightful, too quick to identify problems, or too eager to suggest improvements can be interpreted as arrogance, insubordination, or threat to existing power structures. You've learned to pace your contributions, to present your ideas in ways that don't challenge others' competence, and to sometimes let others reach conclusions you've already arrived at. The psychological cost of this constant modulation is significant. Living with the constant awareness that you need to hide aspects of yourself to maintain social acceptance creates a kind of chronic inauthenticity that can be emotionally exhausting. You know you're not being fully yourself in many situations, but you've learned that being fully yourself often comes with social or professional consequences you're not willing to accept. Jung wrote about the persona, the mask we wear in social situations, and recognized that for some people maintaining this mask requires constant effort and creates psychological tension. Your intelligence camouflage isn't just a social strategy, it's a survival mechanism that allows you to function in a world that isn't designed for minds like yours. The challenge is finding situations and relationships where you can drop this camouflage and be intellectually authentic. This might mean seeking out colleagues who appreciate your analytical abilities, friends who enjoy complex discussion, or professional environments that value insight over conformity. Learning to recognize when your intelligence camouflage is necessary versus when it's habitual allows you to make conscious choices about when to reveal your full capabilities and when to maintain protective distance. The goal isn't to eliminate this adaptive strategy, it's to use it consciously rather than automatically. Your relationship with authority is complicated by your mind's natural tendency to evaluate rather than simply accept. When someone tells you to do something because I said so, or because that's how we've always done it, your brain immediately begins analyzing the logic, effectiveness, and necessity of the directive. This isn't defiance, it's quality control. You don't reject authority automatically, but you do evaluate it automatically. Your mind can't help but assess whether rules, systems, and hierarchies are logical, fair, and effective. When you encounter arbitrary authority, power without purpose or logic, your intelligence rebels not out of ego, but out of a genuine inability to submit to systems that don't make sense. This creates particular challenges in hierarchical environments, like traditional workplaces, educational institutions, and bureaucratic systems, where questioning authority is often interpreted as insubordination rather than intelligent analysis. You've probably been labeled as difficult, rebellious, or problematic, when in reality, you're simply applying the same analytical thinking to authority structures that you apply to everything else. Your authority problem isn't about personal power struggles, it's about intellectual integrity. When you can see obvious flaws in systems, inefficiencies in processes, or illogical aspects of rules and regulations, staying silent feels like participating in collective delusion. Your mind naturally wants to point out these inconsistencies, suggest improvements, and question the logic behind arbitrary restrictions. The frustration you feel isn't with legitimate authority, it's with incompetent authority, arbitrary authority, and authority that demands compliance without providing rationale. You can respect and follow leadership that demonstrates competence, wisdom, and logical thinking. What you struggle with is authority that seems to exist primarily to maintain power rather than to accomplish meaningful goals. This tendency often emerges early in educational settings, where intelligent children begin questioning teaching methods, curriculum choices, and disciplinary policies that seem arbitrary or counterproductive. Rather than being recognized as critical thinking skills, these questions are often interpreted as behavioral problems or disrespect for authority. Jung understood this when he wrote about the individualization process and the tension between social conformity and psychological authenticity. He recognized that highly individuated people often struggle with systems that demand unquestioning obedience because their minds are naturally oriented toward understanding and evaluation rather than blind compliance. Your authority problem manifests in various ways, asking for explanations when others accept instructions without question, suggesting alternatives to established procedures, pointing out inconsistencies in policies, and generally treating authority figures as fellow humans whose ideas deserve evaluation rather than automatic acceptance. This approach to authority can create significant professional and social challenges. In many environments, questioning authority is seen as insubordination, regardless of how thoughtfully or respectfully it's done. You might find yourself in conflict with supervisors, teachers, or other authority figures who interpret your analytical approach as personal challenge to their power. The key is learning to navigate authority relationships in ways that honor your intellectual integrity while avoiding unnecessary conflict. This might mean choosing your battles carefully, finding diplomatic ways to express concerns, or seeking out environments where thoughtful questioning is welcomed rather than punished. Your authority problem isn't a character defect. It's a sign that your mind refuses to surrender its analytical function to social convenience. Learning to navigate hierarchical systems while maintaining your intellectual integrity is one of the ongoing challenges of being an intelligent person in an often illogical world. When someone asks you a question, your mind doesn't just search for an answer. It explores the context of the question, considers multiple possible responses, anticipates follow-up. Questions evaluates the questioner's motivation and assesses the broader implications of different answers. This isn't overthinking. It's multi-layered processing by a mind that naturally sees complexity where others see simplicity. Your thinking operates more like a three-dimensional chess game than a simple cause and effect calculation. You're simultaneously considering immediate consequences, long-term implications, emotional undertones, logical consistency, and relational dynamics. This comprehensive analysis allows you to provide more thoughtful and nuanced responses, but it also means you often need more time to process questions than others expect. People sometimes interpret your processing time as uncertainty or lack of knowledge, when in reality you're conducting a more thorough analysis than they're capable of imagining. Your mind is sorting through multiple layers of meaning and implication that simply don't occur to more linear thinkers. This multi-layered thinking extends beyond just answering questions. It affects how you approach problems, make decisions, and understand situations. You naturally see connections between seemingly unrelated factors, anticipate consequences that others miss, and recognize patterns that exist beneath the surface of obvious cause and effect relationships. The challenge is communicating this multi-layered understanding to people who think in more linear, sequential ways. When you try to explain your reasoning, you often end up providing more context and consideration than others want or can follow. Your comprehensive analysis can come across as unnecessarily complicated when others are looking for simple, straightforward answers. You've probably learned to simplify your explanations and limit your responses to avoid overwhelming others with the full complexity of your thinking. But this simplification process can be frustrating, because it means you're constantly translating your natural thought processes into forms that others can digest, often losing nuance and depth in the translation. Jung wrote about the complexity of introverted thinking and the challenge of communicating internal analysis to others who don't engage in the same level of internal processing. He recognized that multi-layered thinkers often struggle to convey the full richness of their analysis because their audience lacks the patience or capacity to follow complex reasoning. Your multi-layered thinking process manifests in daily life, has a tendency to see problems from multiple angles simultaneously, When colleagues present what seems like a straightforward issue, your mind immediately begins exploring interconnected factors, potential unintended consequences, historical precedents, and systemic implications that others haven't considered. This comprehensive approach to thinking makes you valuable in planning and problem-solving situations, but it can also make you seem indecisive or overly complicated to people who prefer quick, simple solutions. Your mind's refusal to accept surface-level explanations isn't inefficiency, it's sophistication. The exhaustion you sometimes feel isn't from thinking too much, it's from constantly having to compress complex, multi-layered insights into simplified explanations that others can understand and accept. This translation process requires significant mental energy and often results in watered-down versions of your actual thoughts. Your multi-layered thinking also affects how you process emotions and relationships. When someone behaves in a particular way, your mind automatically considers their possible motivations, the context of their behavior, their emotional state, past experiences that might be influencing their actions, and the broader patterns in your relationship with them. This comprehensive emotional analysis helps you understand people more deeply, but it can also create a sense of isolation when you realize that others aren't engaging in the same level of relational complexity. You might find yourself feeling lonely in relationships where your attempts to explore deeper dynamics are met with discomfort or disinterest. Learning to appreciate your multi-layered thinking process while finding ways to communicate effectively with more linear thinkers is an ongoing challenge. The goal isn't to simplify your thinking, it's to develop translation skills that allow you to share your insights in forms that others can appreciate and benefit from. The night owl's paradox. Your brain comes alive when the world goes quiet. Those hours between midnight and dawn aren't just time. They're sacred space where your mind finally has the freedom to roam without interruption, distraction, or social obligation. This isn't poor sleep hygiene. It's when your authentic self emerges from behind the mask of daily social performance. During these late-night hours, your creativity flows more freely, your insights become clearer, and your thoughts finally have the space they need to develop without constant interruption. The silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility, reflection, and the kind of deep thinking that daylight hours rarely accommodate. You've probably tried to force yourself into conventional sleep schedules, believing that your natural rhythm is somehow wrong or unhealthy. But for many highly intelligent people, late-night hours represent peak cognitive functioning time when the brain's natural patterns of creativity and reflection are most active. The world is designed for morning people with work schedules, social expectations, and cultural norms that favor early risers and penalize night owls. You've likely been told that successful people wake up early that night, owls are lazy or undisciplined, and that you need to change your natural rhythm to fit social expectations. But research consistently shows that chronotype, your natural sleep and wake preferences, is largely genetic, and that forcing yourself into incompatible schedules can actually reduce cognitive performance and psychological well-being. Your night owl tendencies aren't a character flaw. They're a biological reality that affects when your mind functions optimally. The quality of your late-night thinking is often superior to your daytime cognition, not because you're avoiding responsibilities, but because your brain is operating during its natural peak performance hours. The insights you have at 2 a.m. aren't the product of sleep deprivation. They're the result of your mind finally having the quiet space it needs to process, integrate, and create. Jung wrote about the value of liminal states, those boundary times, and spaces where conventional rules don't apply and deeper truths can emerge. He understood that some of our most important psychological and creative work happens during these threshold periods, when the ordinary world relaxes its grip on our attention. Your night owl patterns serve multiple psychological functions. The late night hours provide solitude, when the rest of the world is asleep, removing the pressure of social interaction and expectation. They offer uninterrupted time for deep thinking, creative work and emotional processing that's difficult to find during busy daytime hours. The darkness itself contributes to this psychological shift. Something about the absence of daylight creates a different kind of mental space, more introspective, more contemplative, more conducive to the kind of deep reflection that your mind craves. The night offers permission to think thoughts and feel emotions that might seem inappropriate or impractical during the productive demands of daylight. Your night owl tendencies might also be connected to your sensitivity to stimulation. Daytime hours are filled with noise, activity, and social demands that can be overwhelming for sensitive nervous systems. Nighttime provides the quiet, low stimulation environment that allows your mind to function without the constant interference of external input. The challenge is finding ways to honor your natural chronotype while meeting the demands of a world that operates on different schedules. This might mean protecting your late-night creative time, finding work that accommodates flexible schedules, or simply accepting that your peak performance hours don't align with conventional expectations. Fighting against your natural chronotype is like trying to force a nocturnal animal to hunt during the day. It's possible, but it reduces effectiveness and creates unnecessary stress. Your night owl patterns aren't something to overcome, they're something to understand and accommodate when possible. The outsider's perspective. You exist in most social groups as a friendly outsider, present, engaged, but never quite fully belonging. This isn't social inadequacy. It's the natural result of a mind that operates differently from the mainstream. You can participate in group dynamics, contribute to conversations, and maintain relationships, but you rarely feel like you're truly home in any social configuration. This perpetual outsider status isn't loneliness, it's perspective. Your slight distance from social groups allows you to observe patterns, dynamics, and behaviors that fully embedded members can't see. You notice the unspoken rules, the power structures, the unconscious behaviors that shape group interactions in ways that participants rarely recognize. Your outsider perspective is actually a form of social intelligence that allows you to understand group dynamics more objectively than people who are fully immersed in them. You can see the forest, while others are focused on individual trees, recognizing patterns and systems that escape the notice of people who are too close to the situation to maintain analytical distance. This doesn't mean you're antisocial or that you don't value relationships. It means you experience relationships and social groups differently than people whose minds are more naturally aligned with group thinking and collective behavior. Your individuality isn't defiance. It's authenticity in a world that often rewards conformity over genuine self-expression. The challenge of perpetual outsider status is that it can create a sense of not belonging anywhere, even in groups where you're welcomed and valued. You might find yourself wondering if there's something wrong with you, if you're missing some essential social skill that would allow you to feel fully integrated into community life. But your outsider perspective is actually a gift, both to yourself and to the groups you interact with. Your ability to see patterns, question assumptions, and maintain analytical distance allows you to contribute insights that fully embedded members can't access. Your questions and observations often help groups understand themselves better and make better decisions. Jung wrote extensively about the individuated person's relationship to collective consciousness, recognizing that psychological maturity often requires maintaining some distance from group thinking while still participating meaningfully in community life. He understood that some people are naturally oriented toward individual rather than collective psychology. Your outsider status manifests in various ways, feeling like you're observing social interactions rather than fully participating in them. Noticing group dynamics that others seem unaware of, questioning social norms and expectations that others accept without examination, and maintaining a sense of individual identity even within close relationships. This perspective allows you to maintain objectivity about social situations that others experience subjectively. You can see when groups are making poor decisions based on emotion rather than logic, when social pressures are pushing people to act against their best interests, or when collective thinking is preventing groups from considering important alternatives. The key is learning to value your outsider perspective rather than trying to eliminate it, by forcing yourself to fit more completely into group dynamics. Your distance isn't a problem to solve, it's a position to occupy consciously and skillfully. This might mean accepting that you'll always feel somewhat separate from groups, while finding ways to contribute your unique perspective in helpful rather than alienating ways. It means recognizing that belonging doesn't require complete integration, and that your value to groups often comes precisely from your ability to maintain analytical distance. Your outsider perspective isn't a sign of social failure, it's a sign of intellectual independence and psychological individuation. Learning to embrace this position rather than fighting against it allows you to contribute your gifts while finding the kinds of connection and community that work for your particular type of mind. The truth about highly intelligent minds isn't that they're better or worse than other types of minds, it's that they're different, and that difference comes with both gifts and challenges that are rarely acknowledged or understood by mainstream culture. Your overthinking isn't pathology, it's thoroughness in a world that rewards hasty decisions. Your need for solitude isn't antisocial behavior, it's cognitive restoration in a society that demands constant interaction. Your resistance to routine isn't lack of discipline, it's creative flexibility in systems designed for conformity. Your small talk aversion isn't social inadequacy, it's a preference for meaningful exchange over empty ritual. Your authority problems aren't rebelliousness, they're intellectual integrity confronting arbitrary power. Your environmental sensitivity isn't being difficult, it's a nervous system that processes information more completely than average. These patterns aren't habits to overcome or fix, they're aspects of cognitive difference that deserve understanding, accommodation and respect. The goal isn't to become more like everyone else, it's to understand how your mind works and create conditions that allow it to function optimally. Carl Jung spent his career studying the psychology of individuation and the process by which people become authentically themselves rather than copies of social expectations. He understood that psychological health isn't about fitting in. It's about developing the courage to be who you actually are, even when that authenticity creates social friction. Your intelligent mind isn't a burden to bear or a problem to solve. It's a gift to develop and a perspective to contribute. The world needs people who think differently, who question assumptions, who see patterns that others miss, and who maintain the intellectual courage to trust their own analysis, even when it contradicts popular opinion. In a world that often seems designed for the intellectually average, maintaining your authentic cognitive style requires both courage and strategy. It means learning to honor your mind's natural patterns while developing the skills necessary to navigate systems that weren't designed for people like you. This isn't about superiority or elitism, it's about cognitive diversity and the recognition that different types of minds contribute different kinds of value to human culture and society. Your particular way of thinking adds something unique to the collective human experience. The challenge isn't changing yourself to fit the world, it's finding or creating spaces where your authentic intelligence can emerge and contribute. Most importantly, it means developing compassion for your own cognitive difference and recognizing that your struggles with mainstream expectations aren't personal failures. They're the natural result of trying to operate a sophisticated system in an environment that wasn't designed to support its optimal functioning. Your mind is not broken, difficult, or wrong. It's simply different. And that difference is both the source of your struggles and the foundation of your unique contribution to the world. Learning to work with your cognitive patterns rather than against them isn't just a path to personal well-being. It's how you access and develop the gifts that your particular type of intelligence has to offer. Sleep well, think deeply, and remember that in a world of artificial intelligence, your authentic intelligence, with all its complexity, sensitivity, and depth, has never been more valuable or necessary.